Well, as we mentioned, 50 security experts signed this open letter condemning Trump. Matthew Waxman is one of them. He served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense under President George W. Bush, and he joins us now. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Why do you think Donald Trump poses a risk to our national security?
For me, and I think for most of us who signed this letter, it's not about reasonable policy differences. It's about basic fitness for office. Does the candidate have the necessary judgment, character, state of mind to serve as commander-in-chief? And we all feel strongly that Mr. Trump does not.
There have been several instances where Mr. Trump, for example, during a debate advocated committing war crimes, U.S. soldiers committing war crimes. He's talked about the need to perhaps dismantle NATO. What other things that he said on the campaign trail in interviews that has given you pause? There
are so many. I mean, those are some examples of some deeply misguided policies that he's advocated, but I think they also show his tendency to sort of lash out and to spontaneously spout policy proposals that have no basis in reality. I think a perfect example is his call for banning the entry of Muslims into the United States as a way of combating terrorism. I think this draws exactly the wrong lessons from especially the last 15 years of history and experience. You want to combat terrorism, you want to combat ISIS, that requires building networks of relationships with allies abroad, including Arab states, Muslim-majority countries. And I'm talking about law enforcement cooperation, intelligence cooperation, military cooperation, diplomatic cooperation. Combating terrorism requires sustaining relationships of trust between the government and Muslim American communities. Even Mr. Trump's mere statement that the way we ought to combat terrorism is by banning Muslims from entering the country, it not only does it expose a very disturbing xenophobic streak that he has, but it runs completely counter to these very important lessons, bipartisan lessons upon which there is a tremendous agreement among national security professionals.
His supporters and Mr. Trump himself will say, look, there are a lot of people in this country who are unhappy with the direction this country has gone in the last 8 years or so. There are a lot of people who are hurting financially. There are a lot of people who feel that the standing of the United States in the world has come down. And that this mess, Mr. Trump recently said, was created by what he calls Washington insiders. They have made the U.S. a mess, meaning the folks on this list. What do you say to that?
Well, he talks about mess and he talks about making America great again. I mean, these are slogans for which he has no serious content behind them. I'm not here to defend the Bush administration's record, though it was an administration in which I served and served proudly, as did a lot of the people on that letter. The Bush administration and President Bush made many mistakes. We had vigorous debates among ourselves about how to address those mistakes or how to set U.S. policy right. I think the key issue here is who among the candidates has the necessary character, the necessary knowledge, the necessary judgment to minimize the likelihood of future mistakes and to learn the right lessons from the past. And
yeah, I was going to say, well, but Mr. Trump says, and his supporters say, look, he's just speaking the way that a lot of Americans feel, that there have been people that have been in Washington, that have been part of the security apparatus, that have been part of various administrations, not just Democratic ones, Republican ones, but that they all have one thing in common. They're insiders. And Hillary Clinton is an insider, you're an insider, and he's an outsider. He may not get it right all the time, but he's going to learn and he's going to do the things that the people that support him care about.
Yeah, I mean, with regard to that, I mean, first of all, I get that many Americans feel that way, but we now need to make some serious decisions about U.S. foreign policy and national security based on facts and experience. And Mr. Trump is a candidate who I and my co-signatories have some real doubts about his ability to separate fact and fiction. This is a peddler of conspiracy theories, and I don't think he has the necessary judgment to discern true facts from conspiracy theories. I don't think he has the necessary knowledge base or demonstrated desire to build a base of knowledge to make good judgments. I also think this is not about insiders versus outsiders, because that's like simply saying, well, things haven't worked in the past, so let's give a shot to somebody who has built towers in New York City and elsewhere. I think U.S. national security, U.S. military operations are too important, too delicate to put into the hands of somebody who hasn't shown the necessary judgment, the necessary skill to guide us through very complex crises.
President Obama alluded to Donald Trump being a demagogue. Do you think he's a demagogue?
I do think he's a demagogue. I think rather than coming up with serious policy proposals, he spouts these sort of banner slogans that appeal to certain instincts among some parts of the population. I get that he has some very strong support among large swaths of voters, but I think he is much more a demagogue than a serious policy thinker.
So then the question is, why did you guys wait until now? I mean, a lot of his opponents were saying that on the campaign trail, and I recognize that most of the people, if not all of the people on this list, are defense officials, they are policy folks, they're not necessarily politicians. But why wait until now? Yeah,
I think some of us have been stunned that the political process hasn't solved the problem of Trump on its own, and to some degree, his dangerousness has been something that has been proving itself and building over time. I mean, these days people talk about concerns about giving Mr. Trump control over the nuclear button, and that is a concern I have. But I have a much bigger concern about giving him control over any U.S. military forces. I mean, even in the last week, he has revealed a certain callousness, for example, with the way he talks about the family members of fallen soldiers, that I think shows a basic unfitness to make very basic and even routine decisions about putting American service members' lives on the line or foreign lives on the line with military operations.
Finally, he would say, and he has said, that you and the others on this list are supporting Hillary Clinton. Is she getting your vote? Are you somehow, he's sort of, when he's on the campaign trail, he'll say, well, this is the establishment and, they all support Hillary, or they are somehow connected to the Clintons in some way. Are you connected in any way to Hillary Clinton?
I have no direct connection. If the election were today, I would vote for Hillary Clinton because I think she has the necessary fitness to serve as commander-in-chief. I think Mr. Trump, the main rival in this election cycle, does not. Some other signatories, I think, may vote for a third-party candidate. Some may not vote, but all of us feel strongly that Mr. Trump is not qualified to serve as commander-in-chief.
Matthew, one last question, because my producer is saying we have to wrap, but I just want to know, if he's able to put the genie back in the bottle, will that change how you feel? Because there are a lot of people that are saying, look, he's going to get it. He's going to sort of get on the straight and narrow. We saw a little bit of that yesterday when he delivered his economic speech. Would that change your mind?
At this point, it wouldn't. I think he's revealed too much. He's had too many chances to prove himself, and I'm talking about just basic fitness to serve in the highest constitutional office.
Matthew Waxman, we thank you so much for stopping by. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you.